kind of before we get started, Sky, kind of what would just love to know, just as a quick question, kind of what sort of got you started in blockchain? What got you in this industry?
I went to Draper University after I studied computer science at college, and it's a startup program founded by the billionaire Tim Draper. He's the guy who talks about Bitcoin and blockchain all day long, and I somewhat got brainwashed by him. And also, there's a startup accelerator called Boost VC right across the street. So it was there that I got to know a lot of exciting blockchain startup projects. And I learned and I felt that blockchain would be the next big thing. It has so great potential. And I started playing with Ethereum. Ethereum is a great tool, but it has its own limitation. So, for example, it's slow, it cannot scale, and also transaction fees are high. And it also lacks some security measurements. So you can see that the smart contracts can get hacked quite often. And also the transaction fees are so high that makes it very cost ineffective for developers. So I think that we need a new blockchain. The reason is that because Ethereum is a distributed system and it does not have a mechanism that could facilitate the upgrade across the thousands of nodes globally, so that we definitely need a better blockchain with new technology and that can address these problems.
Yeah, no, I think those are some great points, and definitely some challenges I know that everyone kind of across multiple blockchains are sort of dealing with. So we'll definitely kind of explore your approach to kind of solving, some of those problems. But interesting to hear, being able to hear Tim Draper, I can imagine that's he's very pro, Bitcoin and things like that, and very interesting guy to hear speak as well. It's so funny how, I remember reading about Bitcoin. This is a long time ago, 2012, there was a magazine article, and then, my brother-in-law works for startups, and, they were just sending Bitcoin to each other for, hey, they'd go out and have lunch, and, they'd say, hey, thanks for paying for lunch. And they would just pay each other in Bitcoin when Bitcoin was like $1 or $2.
Right.
And, that's when he first talked to me about it. And I was like, oh, this looks interesting. But at the time I felt it was very, just for a small group of people that were just, experimenting with it. It's amazing to see how big the industry, kind of how everything's grown in just a very short amount of time.
Yeah, things happen very fast. That's faster than we can expect.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing I've noticed. It's I think it's the Bill Gates, has a famous line where everyone overestimates what you can do in 10 years, but underestimates what you can do in 10. And it's just kind of amazing to think, we're really at just 10, 11 years into this thing, and how far we've come. Sometimes I wonder the next 10 years, could be, 10 times more incredible. Not from a value perspective, but just from it entering all of our lives, maybe with not even realizing that we're using an app or a dApp that uses blockchain. We just like the fact that it works well, it's private, it's secure, permissionless. So I'm really excited for the future.
Yeah, future could be the world of blockchains.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm hoping for. That's why I like this background so much. This is what 20, 30 years from now could look like. So hopefully a blockchain world. Perfect. Well, it's just at the start of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started kind of with the official Q&A. I just want to thank everybody here for joining us for the last 5 minutes as we just kind of talked before we got started. But kind of officially to begin, I want to thank Cypherium, Chainlink, and the blockchain community for joining us today. In addition, I want to thank Sky Guo, the CEO, founder of Cypherium, for joining us. The real goal of this Q&A is just to allow the community to learn more about kind of the integration. Why does this make sense for Chainlink and Cypherium to work together in the future? And then really exploring what makes Cypherium unique. So as you might have heard Sky mention a few minutes ago, he's seen some challenges kind of in some of the current blockchains. And so they're creating something really unique using kind of a hybrid mix of sort of ideas and mixing, I really think, things together. So really excited to kind of explore that with them today. It's going to be about 30 to 40 minutes. Really going to allow Sky explain kind of what Cypherium is and the technology behind it. If for some reason you have a question, after this talk. Again, feel free to reach out to the Cypherium community, reach out to the Chainlink community, be happy to get you connected to the right people to get the answers to your questions. We'll also add a bunch of links in the description. So if you'd like to learn more about Cypherium, what they're building, how to join their social channels, how to start following them, you'll see that in the description, as well as everything about Chainlink. So perfect. So kind of to get started, Sky, I'd love if you could maybe just introduce yourself, give us just a little bit of your background, and then maybe what your team is currently working on.
Thanks, Ray. I'm Sky Guo, and I'm computer science background. I started programming while I was in elementary school, and later I started programming with mobile, and I got into blockchain world like while in 2012. So I bought some Bitcoins and purchased some stuff online. So by this time, I was using Bitcoin as a virtual currency. I thought it was real cool. But later, nobody thought that Bitcoin could become so popular and so valuable. So after I studied computer science in college, I went to Draper University, and it was there that I got to learn a lot about blockchain and decided to devote myself into the blockchain. So I started the idea of creating a new blockchain because of the limitations that Ethereum could not solve. And by that time, blockchain was still like a small group because it was like late 2016. So you can easily get to know some experts in that field. For example, I made friends with Professor Amin bin Sayer. He's a Cornell professor and the inventor of the Bitcoin NG algorithm. And also he introduced me to Professor Brian Ford, who is the inventor of the Omni Ledger. It's the first workable sharding proposal for blockchain. And also he invented Bitcoin. So it's like a first permissionless PBFT-based blockchain proposal. So based on their research works, I came up with the idea of Cypherium. So Cypherium, what we want to solve the problem is that you should make blockchain scalable, but you should not sacrifice the decentralization and revert to like a trusted third party, because that violates the blockchain's principles. So we want to build a blockchain that's truly scalable and decentralized. We first started with the technology of hybrid consensus with PBFT and proof of work. So it's basically it's very similar to Bitcoin. And we use the dual chain data structure as the election mechanism. So miners could compete with mining power, and the first miner that finds the next valid blocks that becomes a valid validator is a PBFT group. But the problem of PBFT is that it's very complex. So it has a n-square complexity that makes it very slow and unable to scale. For example, if you have like 10 nodes, for each round of communication, you'd have to make 100 communications. But if you have like 100 nodes, you will need to make 10,000 communications for each round. And that's very impractical for a decentralized block, distributed network. And it was in 2018 at a conference held in Cornell Tech actually. I met a guy, so he was only a PhD student at the time, but he sold me his research project called HotStuff. So HotStuff is a new blockchain, it's a new representing fault tolerance consensus algorithm protocol. By that time, it was very new that nobody had heard of it. And our developer team began to working on it because HotStuff solves the PBFT's communication scalability problem. It reduces the complexity to just n. So it's linear. So it means that if you have like 100 nodes, you only need to do 100 times of communication. And if you have 1,000 nodes, it remains 1,000. So it will be much more scalable and secure than PBFT. Last year, when Facebook announced Libra, which I found so amazing that Libra is also using HotStuff. But the difference is that Libra's HotStuff is permissioned, while Cypherium's HotStuff is permissionless because we integrate with proof of work as a node election mechanism. And so you could see that Cypherium is kind of like the permissionless counterparty of Libra. And Libra just announced its 2.0 white paper, saying it has abandoned the plan to go permissionless in the future, which was originally one of their plan. So Cypherium now is like one of the first blockchain that's based on the decentralized permissionless HotStuff algorithm. We also, that was the technology part. We are also actively building our relationships with enterprises and both public and private sectors. We are a member of world's leading blockchain research group, the IC3 Initiative for Cryptocurrencies and Contracts, which Chainlink is also a member. So that's how we got in touch with Chainlink. And also we are members of the US Fast Payments Council. That's a group led by the Federal Reserve and other industry leaders such as Visa, Goldman Sachs, Walmart. That's aiming to facilitate the faster payment revolution for the Federal Reserve. Because of these active relationships, so we know the pain point of the industry. We are building our blockchain. It's more application oriented. So it's not just a plain talks about technology, like how many transactions per second we can process, but also what real world problems we can solve, because the blockchain really needs to see killer apps that so far the killer apps has not yet emerged, but we believe that starting this decade, we will see more and more killer apps that build on top of blockchains.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point about killer apps. I've definitely seen things kind of emerge that I think are features that killer apps will likely have. Really cool stuff like out of Pull Together and even back to CryptoKitties, and we're kind of seeing cool things with NFTs. So I feel like we've got the pieces. I think it's just really, can we create platforms that allow people to put the pieces together on apps that really make things seamless? So very interesting kind of what you're doing. You mentioned kind of IC3 and Chainlink as well. I think it's also interesting, while blockchain sometimes seems like it's very big and it is global, at the same time, you know, kind of the leaders in this space are always seem to be part of these groups where everyone's kind of doing the research and really pushing the space forward. So yeah, it was excellent to hear, you know, you're members of IC3 and that Cornell Tech program as well. Getting into kind of the integration with Chainlink, can you let me know why this is something maybe that sort of interested you from the Cypherium side, accessing decentralized oracles?
Sure. As a smart contract platform, it is the most important thing is that we're able to process data. And we are a permissionless, decentralized blockchain platform. That means we should not rely on any trusted third party to feed the data to the blockchain and its dApps. That's why Chainlink plays this important role that can connect Cypherium with other data sources like APIs and maybe I suppose you also support like data source, like database connections, right? Like
Yes.
ODBCs. Yeah. So with Chainlink, we could feed our smart contract and the apps that's running. Maybe you see you want to pull data like a sport event or like the stock market. You could build this more meaningful use cases, and with Chainlink, you do not have to rely on any third-party trust data source. And the other important feature that Chainlink offers is the verifiable random number generator. So random numbers are in conflict with blockchain's principle because blockchains are supposed to be deterministic. There's no randomness, but there are a lot of use cases that require random numbers. For example, if you want to create a decentralized Texas Hold'em poker, you have to have like a reliable random generator because you have to make your game fair. That's also verifiable. But random number generator is not that easy to implement on blockchain. Some blockchain projects are using like the hash that's from the miners, but those hashes are published by the miners, and these miners can manipulate the hashes. So with Chainlink's random number generator, it's a perfect fit for our smart contracts to be able to pull random numbers. And also it reduces our work to implement our own random number generators. So that's why this strategic partnership with Chainlink is so important to us.
No, that's great. I think it's kind of difficult for a lot of people in this space to understand how challenging random numbers are, because as you just mentioned, I know a lot of times people will just say, okay, we'll use the hash off the last block, but at the same time, that's not random. You've already created your number is already being generated off something that is essentially not random due to the deterministic nature of how blockchains work. So I think that's a great point, and very excited to see kind of VRF and how people will use random numbers on kind of the blockchain in the future. So thank you for bringing that up.
Mhm.
I'd love to kind of get into, I did a little bit of research prior to the call, and you talked a little bit about HotStuff. Can you explain kind of your hybrid approach to consensus? You talked a little bit about kind of proof of work and some other concepts. So would love if you would kind of explore a little bit about how consensus works on Cypherium.
Sure. So Cypherium combines the proof of work and HotStuff as it's a hybrid consensus algorithm. Our blockchain is first based on a research paper called Bitcoin NG I mentioned earlier. So Bitcoin NG decouples the original Bitcoin mining and transaction verification process. So originally, the mining process is a single process that both verify the transaction and also secure the blockchain. By decoupling it, so the miner can, it does not have to wait for the blockchain for the mining time to perform the transaction confirmation, because in Bitcoin you have to wait like 10 minutes for a transaction to be confirmed. But in Bitcoin NG, the transactions can be instantly confirmed, while the proof of work, also called mining, is used as a leader election. So the leader election is a mechanism that helps the distributed network reach consensus. So the leader is the winning miner, and that miner blockchain that miner produces blocks that can be accepted by the rest of the nodes in the network. And we borrow that idea, and in Cypherium, we use a group of validators instead of a single validator in Bitcoin NG, because in Bitcoin NG, if that leader node fails, then the network is paralyzed. So there's no more block production. But in Cypherium, we have a group of validators that forms a Byzantine fault tolerance committee. So as all the transactions require at least a 2/3 majority quorum to become valid and recorded on the blockchain. And also because there are multiple validators, so any validator, if it fails, whether it's the leader validator or like other committee validators, the rest of the validators can still remain active and continue process the consensus. So that's an important safety measurement for Cypherium. And the HotStuff, it constantly changes the leader so that it further reduces the problem of the leader failure. So in case if a leader fails, it will be replaced by the next available validator right away. And during our testnet can process up to 5,000 transactions per second on the basic HotStuff implementation. So HotStuff also comes with a pipeline implementation. It's sort of like a parallel transaction processing. So one validator could process the current step while also change the pipeline, the process of the next step. So by implementing the pipeline HotStuff, we can theoretically bring our transaction per second to over 10,000.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's really interesting how you took almost, I want to say, like what you feel are the best approaches from different things, and have basically combined them to almost get all the benefits or the maximum benefits of those approaches. In terms of miners, is it similar to how someone mines Bitcoin? Can anyone be a miner? Interested to kind of hear how that works.
Yeah, that's correct. Because in Cypherium, the mining process purpose is first reward the works of the miners. So there will be block reward, and it's the same as Bitcoin and Ethereum's reward mechanism. And the second, we require miners to put their hash power in mining because we want to keep those fake and malicious nodes away. Because if like a hacker who controls a botnet, if there's no mining mechanism, he could easily fill our network with the bots that he control. But with a miner, we can prevent the Sybil attacks, and you have to spend resource so that you can become a validator. And also, if you have more resources, if you have like more hash power, it does not guarantee that you will always become a miner, a validator. It's because we also have a built-in random function. So we will select among, so we will have like a candidate pool that if you for example, for every round of mining, there will be top 10 miners who find the next valid block, and only one of these 10 miners will be chosen as the next validator. So even if you are not the first miner that finds a valid block, you can still possibly become the next validator.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. So so basically it's not only you have the miners to validate, but then there's basically a randomness function inside there, which essentially chooses one of those as well. So you ultimately don't know who's going to validate the next block until it occurs.
Right. That
Perfect.
makes Cypherium invulnerable from the 51% attack.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because you could never know who's going to end up validating. Yeah, that's very interesting. Kind of getting on to some other sort of technology and features that you're developing. Could you talk a little bit about kind of your multi-level governance protocol and sort of explain kind of how that works?
Sure. A blockchain is a multi-layered system. There are like a network layer, consensus layer, a smart contract layer, and some also have like an off-chain layer or data storage layer. So this consists of these different layers, and each layer's governance is different from other layers. So sometimes these layers can run into conflict. So for example, you know that the Bitcoin had a fork. I believe it was like 2017, in the year of 2017. It was because the developers had disagreement with the miners. So the miners, they can control the block sizes, but the developers do not agree on that. So we came up with a multi-level governance design that separates the networks layer and consensus layers governance from the application layers governance. So you could run like multiple virtual machines. So it's not like all controlled by Cypherium. You could run Ethereum Solidity, and you could also run the JVM. That's the default virtual machine of Cypherium. And you could build your own transaction logic. You could have full control of your dApps. So even if you decide to stop running your dApps on Cypherium and migrate to other blockchains, that's totally doable. And for the protocol level governance, so the miners, they could adjust the block sizes and the transaction fees according to their needs. And they are also able to like vote on like whether to use the proof of work, or they can even switch to like proof of stake in the future if that's like better consensus than proof of work. And these two layers will not run in conflict because they are very loosely coupled. So it's not like a Ethereum, which Solidity is the only virtual machine that's supported, and everything is like put together. It's not that easy to unplug one layer from the other.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you for that. Interesting to hear sort of the separation, and you have a system which basically allows kind of these different groups to kind of control things. So interesting from that perspective. I know you're also working on a decentralized ID solution, which I know is a big challenge. I don't think has been talked about as much in the space as possible. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Our decentralized ID solution is like using hashes and cryptographies to preserve, to create a public verifiable ledger of identities, while the full details of your personal data are stored off the blockchain. It's kind of like, for example, if you're a government and you can issue the identities of your citizens So they will have a private copy, and you also publish the hash, you sign that hash on Cypherium's public blockchain. So if a third party needs to verify the identity data provided by the citizen, so they can look up the Cypherium blockchain ledger and verify if that data provided by, for example, like a job candidate, if he claims that he has a valid driver license, then the employer could verify the driver license info with the government's authoritative hash on the Cypherium blockchain. And if the two match, then the job candidate is telling the truth. And you don't have to like have a centralized database that store all the personal information data. And Cypherium's decentralized ID is also compatible with all the popular formats such as the DID standard, which is promoted by the Web3 and Microsoft. We did some successful experiment with world's largest human resource company, Randstad. It's based in Netherlands, and our case study is published on Google Cloud.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll drop the link in the description as well on that case study. I know from just my perspective, obviously, DeFi is very, very hot, very interesting right now. But one of the biggest things is just thinking about how getting loans and things like that. The reason you have to over collateralize everything is because no one knows who anybody is, which that's okay. But it would be interesting to see kind of in the current, able to merge kind of the current system and say, oh, I can verify that Rory is Rory. He has some form of credit worthiness. And if he needs a loan, maybe he doesn't have to over collateralize. Maybe it doesn't have to be as much because I can verify that he in fact is that person. So
right. And the traditional way for that kind of verification is that you have to go through a credit bureau agency such as like Equifax. But Equifax had one of the largest data breaches in the US history. I believe that over 200 million data records were stolen because as a centralized systems always run the risk of single point of failure. But with Cypherium, like you don't have to put all the data into one place. Like you can just allow the third party to verify your personal data with the Cypherium blockchain's hash and without having to expose your data to like malicious actors.
No, yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. And it's unfortunate we have all these centralized systems that we rely on. And if they go down, the system breaks. If they get hacked, your information gets out there and breaks. So right. I'm very excited. I think as much of this future behind me looks, I'm just as much excited by a future where I can decide what data to provide somebody. They can only access that piece of data that I provided. And I don't have to trust that there's some computer somewhere that's not going to get hacked one day that lets everybody know all the information about me that I didn't want out there. So right. Very interesting. And I'm very excited by things like decentralized identity. So they'll definitely be following up kind of what you guys are building there. Kind of that being said, can you maybe explain a little bit about what your focus is right now, maybe in the short term? So the next kind of quarter, the next 3 months, what are you guys really focused on?
Sure. We are actively planning for our mainnet launch. So that's a highly anticipated, like our community is quite excited, and I'm not sure Chainlink's community is excited too. We recently joined the Digital Monetary Institute, founded by a global think tank for central banks, official monetary and financial institutions forum. It's based in UK, and they have published a lot of studies with like IBM and other central banks on the possibility of issuing the CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies. And we believe that the CBDC would be the next killer app for blockchains. So currently, like People's Bank of China and the Bank of France are all experimenting their own digital currencies. And in the next couple of years, so the digital currency will become mainstream and replace the paper cash we use, especially right now we are affected by the COVID-19. It's no longer safe to use paper cash anymore. We are also engaging with ARMFIF and its partners on those like technology and other aspects, how to implement the CBDCs using our technology and the blockchain in general, and also how to control like the monetary policy when all the cash become digitized. So We are working on some research studies as well, and also we developed our own cross-chain. It's called Digital Currency Interoperability Framework. It can swap between like two different digital central bank digital currencies via Cypherium blockchain, because most of the CBDCs are gonna be permissioned on the permission network, and in order for another so if like another country's citizen to exchange the currencies, how can they make sure that there will be like no need to trust, so that we need to introduce a middle layer that is Cypherium, that how Cypherium plays its role. So through the Cypherium digital currency interoperability solution, you could say swap your digital euro with like digital Chinese yuan, and it's also instantly settled on the Cypherium blockchain.
No, that's great, because I think that's one of the interesting things is if we have all these fiat currencies, which essentially get turned into digital, you'll still have the same issue of you go and visit Europe and you need euros and you have US dollars. You're still faced with a similar challenge that you were faced with today, which is you have to go to some type of exchange or some type of bank.
Right.
Obviously, it'd be a lot easier to be able to press a button on my phone and say, I want to turn 500 US dollars into euros, and know that within seconds or milliseconds, that's done. And I could then make a purchase or buy a train ticket or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. This is the goal that we are after.
Awesome. Well, that's a huge goal, but very excited to see as your team kind of pursues that. So we've done a lot of discussion about Cypherium here, but interested to know yourself, Sky. Do you have any interest or hobbies maybe outside of Cypherium or blockchain that you kind of pursue? You probably don't have a lot of time right now, but when you do, is there anything that you'd like to do outside of this?
I love piloting, flying plane. I first learned how to fly plane in Santa Monica while I was going to college. It was so much freedom that I enjoy. And also I could see the beautiful Santa Monica sunset. I just loved it. And that's how I give my English name Sky, because the sky is the limit. It's like so much of imagination and also like exploration. I think everyone wants to go up in the sky at some point of their lives. So I think that sky is also the best word to describe my personality, because I love challenges and I love to solve those challenges. I love to reach the high up and like the limitless and also boundless freedom. That's what I enjoy. Yeah, because now I'm so busy that I do not fly anymore. But after I launch our mainnet is launched, I will surely resume my flying activities.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, excited to see you back up in the air soon, hopefully. That being said, what's the latest timing of your mainnet? Do you have kind of a quarter picked out? Do you have a month picked out? Kind of what's the latest update there?
Yeah, right now we plan to launch our mainnet in Q3 this year. So we have already done our core development, such as the Cypherium Consensus, the mining algorithm, and also we developed a mobile wallet. So you could download it at the App Store, and also you could, if you are interested, you could request it from our community moderators. And there are people, so our community members are already testing our testnet and sending those test coins to each other. So we are currently working on the final security check and the code audit. And after that is done, it's time to launch our mainnet.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, I'm very excited. Speaking about your community, what are kind of the main channels for your community that you typically communicate on? What's the best way to follow Cypherium's development?
Sure. Please follow us on Twitter as Cypherium Chain, and our Telegram group is Cypherium _ group. And also you could follow us on Facebook, Cypherium Chain, and Reddit. That's /Cypherium. These are the main social media that we use.
Perfect. We'll have those links in the description as well if people want to join and describe. But first off, I just want to say, as we kind of wrap things up here, thank you so much, Sky, for taking your time. I know you're focused on mainnet right now, so I know you're very, very busy. I also want to thank James at Cypherium as well, who kind of helped organize this behind the scenes. Really appreciate his work there. And again, want to thank everybody for watching this today. Those of you that were not able to make the live stream, or maybe you had to leave, we'll have this recording up shortly today. Of course, I'll share it with the Cypherium team. We'll communicate that out over all our social channels as well, so you can follow up and watch this. We're always looking to do more and more of these. So if you have any interesting people or want to make any suggestions for us, please let us know. Thank you again, Sky, for joining us. Looking forward to following Cypherium's progress, and hopefully here in a couple months we can do this again once you guys launch on mainnet and get a new update from you.
Yeah, love to.
Awesome. Thank you again, Sky. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us. Have a fantastic day. Enjoy your weekend, and look forward to the next time. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.